Religion is a way, for the most part, to explain what is around us. Someone asked what my religious views were, so I thought I would talk about that for a little bit. I know it's a pretty touchy subject, so please listen all the way through this commentary before, making an opinion about it. When I was 10 years younger, I was an avid believer in Christianity and superstition. I believed in the Garden of Eden and Santa Claus. I have since become religious, but the path to that has been a long one. The reason I mention Santa Claus is because upon the realization that the handwriting on my gifts at Christmas that were addressed as from Santa Claus were identical to those given by my mother, I began to develop a skepticism about the supernatural and applied it to many different walks of life. Soon after, I went through a long period with basically no religious associations. This was caused by a sequence of events throughout my teenage years which I suppose could be called an accumulation of evidence against religion. This evidence ranged from a teacher of mine being molested by a priest as he was a youth, to history class teaching about the mass loss of life caused at the hands of religion, be it the Crusades or even in the last half century the unrest in Ireland to a large extent. Of course, the largest contributor to my developing distaste for organized religion was science. I'm speaking from an entirely Christian point of view since both of my parents were Christian, one being Anglican and one being Catholic, which in itself caused a lot of issues. But I'm sure that if you're more familiar with a different religion, you can apply it to yourself. Science appeared to answer every question or skepticism I had about the supernatural, and at the same time it also asked and answered many questions I'd never even conceived before. From evolution to my realization that my childhood love of dinosaurs did not fit into the Bible very well, I started to be a non-believer. Over the course of my high school, though, a few extremely negative things happened to me which caused me to reconsider being faithful to some sort of higher power. The first and very prominent thing which happened to me was anxiety. I had a freshly renewed terror of dying, which I had really never had before, with the promise of going to heaven. I had never been anxious at all in my life, but a few near-death experiences in high school left me with an avid fear of death, and this anxiety crept its way into other aspects of life. Now, I'm not trying to say that you should not be afraid of death, because, if you're standing in the way of an oncoming bus, I suggest you move, but a fear of death in situations which are uncontrollable to you, largely due to the perceived lack of an afterlife, can be extremely negative. For example, my love of science and fear of dying at the time led me to become quite a hypochondriac, which further added to the anxiety of my life. And if you don't know what a hypochondriac is, it's, a complete and utter terror of becoming sick, be it cancer or, AIDS or something. I wasn't really scared of getting AIDS, but anyway, this further contributed to my anxiety for sure. Another reason why I began to reconsider faith is quantum physics and the realization that the very act of observing something can change how it acts. This led me to believe that the meticulous observations and explanations of science may not have all of the answers I desired. At the time of losing my right eye, I was sitting on a wet street curb with blood gushing out of my eye, surrounded by colorful Halloween costumes and the reek of alcohol. I prayed. If you have ever been in a situation where you genuinely thought you were going to die, I would not be surprised if even the most atheist person would do the same. I sat there and prayed to God for the first time in 4 years, just to help me out. Over the succeeding year, I came to the realization that there is little to no benefit in being an atheist in life. It is obvious that the Garden of Eden never happened, or that Jesus did not cure the blind. Again, I am sorry for my ignorance towards other religions' supernatural stories, but if you take these stories literal, you are bound to do the opposite of what they intended. It is when you take these supernatural aspects literally that you can become a religious fanatic and start conflict with those other religions because you are so embedded with the belief that these stories are unique to only your religion and it's superior for some reason. The way I look at it, these stories should be treated as guidelines. Take them with a grain of salt. Take what you can from them. For example, I would not suggest sacrificing animals in the name of God, as Leviticus states, but stories such as Noah's Ark definitely have merit to them. I believe that to a large extent they are fairly good guidelines on how to go about one's life. Being a nicer person will not only make you a better person, but also happier. Science is definitely a very powerful and useful tool, but can it explain, for example, what caused or is beyond the Big Bang? No, it can't. At least it can't right now. It may in the future, but something as unexplainable or even hard to comprehend as what could be beyond the universe leads me to believe that there could definitely be a higher power or some unexplained force that we have not yet discovered that could have started it all. What many people forget is that science itself is a religion as well. Sure, it may have observable proof, but we know for a fact that observing something does not make it real. Science is an attempt to explain the world around us, just like most of religion. Regardless of what you believe, as I am tolerant to all, I suggest using religion and science as a way of bettering your life. Our time here is limited, and since you no longer need to be scared with the horrors of being sent to hell to be a good person, why not just do it on your own merit? And if you end up in heaven, then it's definitely a positive. I'm not a very big supporter of organized religion, however, because in my experience, it seems to be, to a large extent, a way of controlling populations, of spreading propaganda, of waging wars or warranting wars. And the best example is the Crusades, when an organized religion asked all of its people to wage war on another religion, basically, for not a whole lot of reason. There's definitely a lot of benefits for organized religion, so, I hope I didn't offend you by saying that, because I'm sure there are many organized religions which have, very good intentions. Just any situation in history, it seems, where a very limited number of people are given a lot of power, there seems to be a lot of problems. Westboro Baptist Church is an example, but anyway, that is my opinion on the matter. I hope that I didn't offend anyone with this commentary, as that was not my intention whatsoever. I know it's a very sensitive topic, however, and I do respect all forms of religion. I'm simply here to share my opinion on the matter, and I'm attempting to give people who may not have an incentive to a reason to become a better person. Take this commentary with a grain of salt, and you may benefit from it to an extent. Thank you very much, and have a nice day, guys. My name is Charles.